So one of the first things that we did was we wanted to look at research. And so this was actually, I was walking through the hallowed halls of the NIH when we first got started. I saw this on somebody's window, and it was, "In God we trust, and that everyone else must produce data." And it wasn't as simple from finding the literature to the challenges involved with research, but also the challenges in doing research in this area where there are different philosophies and approaches to care, like with traditional Chinese medicine, yin, yang, a whole approach that's different and very much part of the therapy itself. To also that many of the therapies are given in combination. It's not just one isolated drug or one isolated extract. They're also highly individualized to the person and shifts over time. And then you look at, well, what type of control groups do you use for a mind-body approach or for acupuncture? So we, over time, have realized that you need to use a wide range of methodologies in order to answer different questions. And this sort of is our approach to arthritis, which we have been working with the Division of Rheumatology with Mark Hochberg and his colleagues for almost the entire 20 years. Where we have looked at an approach of arthritis where we don't have all the answers. It's a chronic problem, very costly. And who's that down there at the bottom? I think you're looking good. So we've been both bringing in clinically and also studying acupuncture, herbs, and mind-body approaches to this problem. So if we look at acupuncture first, we get an idea of what can and not be treated by acupuncture. This is essentially the approach that we've taken over the years for acupuncture for osteoarthritis. We first looked at the clinic and looked at what were patients coming in for. Also, what was our clinical experience with Dr. Lau and myself, both licensed acupuncturists, and we saw that this was a big problem. We were treating a lot of patients with arthritis. We looked and did our own systematic reviews of the literature, both for chronic pain and acupuncture for osteoarthritis, saying, yes, it showed promise, but there was certainly more research that needed to be done. And then we began doing preclinical basic science, looking at the effects of acupuncture, both in mouse models, ferret models, and rat models, to look at the anti-inflammatory and anti-hyperalgesia approach, actually 12 different lines of research, which also have all been reinforcing and published a lot in these areas. And then we began to say, let's start the phase 1 trial. We just did an open pilot study. Mark Hochberg was the head of rheumatology back then, and he said, I'm not sure, let's just see if it works let's take 20 patients in the beginning, no control groups, let's just see if acupuncture added to standard care can make a difference. Using standard outcome measures, and what we found is that it was safe and it was effective for that small group of patients. That plus some of the preclinical work allowed us to apply for funding from the NIH so that we could do a phase 2 clinical trial with about 72 patients. We had a small control group, and again, we found that it was feasible to do this study. Patients were coming in, they were benefiting, it was safe, and that allowed us to apply for funding for a phase 3 clinical trial, multi-center randomized controlled trial from the NIH. It was the largest clinical trial done in acupuncture in the United States, I think even today. And we had results that showed that basically that acupuncture was safe and effective in the groups that were getting real acupuncture compared to the groups getting sham acupuncture or false acupuncture. And both of those were doing better than the groups who got just the standard education for their acupuncture. And these were all people who had failed on their standard therapy alone. So the drugs weren't doing it, and they were looking for other answers. And that led for us to do a long-term outcomes, looking at long-term outcomes and cost benefits, which actually hasn't been published. We did this study with Hopkins. They're a little slow over there, and they still need to give us the final paper. But basically, it does show that it's cost-effective over a period of time. And all of that goes into making clinical decisions where you look at the evidence, you look at the patient's conditions, the clinician's experience, and the patient's preferences, and that is what evidence-based medicine is really about. But it's a whole process to get to that stage. And that was the Annals paper published. It was interesting because that paper came out just at the same time, I don't know if you remember, when Vioxx and the anti-inflammatories were, everybody was saying this is like, they were finding that it was severe side effects, killing, more people than they wanted, and so they were taking it off of the market. Well, the same day that broke that news, our paper came out in the Annals, and so this paper, besides making all the, the TV and media tours, it had something like 30 million media hits because of this. Timing is everything. We went on over time to also get one of the NIH Centers of Excellence. These are the program projects that we hear at our university that they value so much. It's really showing about team science, people working together. And we had 3 projects of both looking at the mechanism of acupuncture. We were then moving into how herbal medicines could be beneficial, because quite often you don't do just acupuncture, you use acupuncture plus herbs and plus diet in combination in therapies. So we looked at different ways to look at that. And we took a formula of 11 herbs, Holu Shaolin Dan. It's an 11 herb Chinese formula that's been around for thousands of years. And we began to look at how could you do good research here, because there were issues that were big time that, thinking about, Mattel and toy companies, they have problems with consistency. Well, standardization, consistency, what were in these herbs, what was not in these herbs, was a big issue. And we started to work with collaborators both in the United States and China who were real experts in pharmacognosy and chemistry, and did all the basic science studies and the human studies, a lot of work. I mean, this is sort of the pathway. I won't go through this because it's a lecture in itself, but from the bottom part of identifying the herbal formula all the way through quality assurance work, FDA, IND applications, and then the phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. That's the kind of work that you have to do in order to really, at the end of it, say, we know what this herb can really do. And it takes time, and it takes years. And this was a similar approach. This is a collaborative research center that we've been involved with the Chinese University of Hong Kong for functional bowel disorders, and working with people also at the Mayo Clinic, University of Western Sydney, University of Illinois, Chicago, to look at irritable bowel syndrome, looking at herbal formula and acupuncture, and really having a multidisciplinary team approach to research and also to care. And here you see the different types of people needed for this type of research to go forward.